Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good luck finding a decent parking space anywhere. So if I have a main thing on this channel currently, it's making countdown list videos about my favorite things of a particular subject matter, usually ranking favorite episodes of a TV show or something. That being the case, I've wanted for quite a while to make one of these countdowns specifically for the holiday season. Problem is, if I were to make a list as broad and overdone as top 12 favorite Christmas specials, it probably wouldn't be all that interesting because my favorites are pretty much everyone else's favorites, and I wouldn't have anything all that new to say about any of them that other, better reviewers haven't said already. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, The Snowman, the Rankin Bass specials, several of the bajillion adaptations of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, all those obvious favorites that most people who enjoy Christmas specials always pick, me included. Well, except for A Christmas Story. That's a pretty big holiday classic that I've actually never been all that into. Oh, and Home Alone. And National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And A Charlie Brown Christmas. Okay, so I guess I don't have all the same favorites as everyone else.
Cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking...
Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy those ones fine. They're not beloved classics for nothing. But they don't exactly have my childhood as tightly by the balls as they do for a lot of audiences, and for one reason or another, I just personally don't get as much out of them. I guess I could have maybe rolled with that attitude and made a top 12 most overrated Christmas specials or something like that. But this is supposed to be a jolly time of year with goodwill toward men and all that shit, and I want to talk about stuff I like. So I decided to stick with a favorites list, but one that highlights some of the less conventional, less ubiquitous Yuletide tales. Some of these are fairly traditional as Christmas stories go, as heartfelt and family-friendly as Rudolph or the Grinch, but not as widely celebrated as them. Others are more dark and subversive takes on the so-called most wonderful time of year, and are also less celebrated because of that. These are some of the other December favorites that I love and tend to rewatch most, in addition to all those aforementioned classics that you see on everyone and their grandma's list. So let's get to it. These are my top 12 favorite Christmas movies and specials, besides the obvious ones. Number 12. Invader Zim, the most horrible Xmas ever. If you know this series, you already know exactly why its take on a holiday special should be right at home on this kind of list. Zim, our favorite incompetent alien conqueror, while performing on the street in a human disguise that's somehow even less convincing than his usual one for some reason, decides this time he's going to use Christmas and the world's blind adoration of Santa Claus to enslave Earth. He impersonates Santa and tries to rally the humans to build a doomsday device for themselves to march right into. A plan that's just stupid enough to work in a world where humans are portrayed as just stupid enough to fall for such a self-evidently evil scam. Nothing at all like humans in real life, right?
Will being teleported to our doom be fun and Christmassy? Of course it will, you hideous fool!
However, Zim does this by wearing an unnecessarily high-tech Santa suit infused with so much overflowing data about jolly old Christmas spirit that it eventually swallows him whole and essentially becomes an actual Santa unto itself. Invader Zim, most self-sabotaging Christmas villain of all time. And just in time for Dib to bust in with a kick-ass giant robot and destroy said Santa, thinking he's saving the world but unwittingly doing Zim a favor. Unfortunately, not for the first time in the show. The Santa suit had taken over completely, so had Dib known to just leave well enough alone, then not only would the world have gotten a real live Santa Claus, but also Zim might never have been a problem again. Dib totally could have won this time literally by doing nothing. Dib Membrane, most self-sabotaging Christmas hero of all time. Still, if you know how little his family and peers take him seriously, it's honestly pretty cool to see both his sister and dad actually helping him here, even if they are still entirely self-motivated. From day one, I've always loved Invader Zim for how unapologetically bizarre, dark, and manic it is at nearly all times, and how uniquely funny it is in doing so, and the Christmas episode is no different. Twisting and satirizing this joyous holiday like only the Jonan Vasquez style can. What can I say? That twistedly entertaining Invader Zim flavor and the proud lack of any real moral or heart make it impossible for me not to put it on a list of less obvious favorites. Probably the most delightfully insane Nicktoon Christmas episode ever, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Number 11. South Park Woodland Critter Christmas. I'll be honest, I haven't kept up with South Park in over a decade and a half, at least. So maybe there are newer, better holiday episodes I just haven't seen, but I still have fond memories of the older seasons, and of all the Christmas episodes from those years, this one from Season 8 is by far my favorite. It starts out with your cliché, whimsical, rhyming narration, as Stan begrudgingly does multiple seemingly innocent favors for a bunch of seemingly innocent talking woodland critters, until it eventually turns out they're all a bunch of satanic cultists using him and eventually also Kyle to bring forth the fucking Antichrist. I cannot stress how much funnier and more fucked up this story gets as it goes along. It's non-stop and perversely inventive all the way to the end. The South Park brand of raunchy, gory, go hard or go home shock value isn't the only thing that makes the episode hilarious, though. Stan going through the motions of the stupid Christmas fable he's stumbled into, and just kinda going along with it, is pretty amusing in itself, and oddly makes sense considering all the outlandish things he and his friends deal with like every week. The narration sounding so cheerful at all times, no matter how disturbing the events he's actually describing are, or how much Stan eventually tries to ignore the narration and just do what he wants, are great too, as is the absolutely perfect reveal of who the narrator actually is at the end. All in all, a laugh-out-loud, wonderfully atypical Christmas story, where we all learn the age-old lesson about how one genuine act of kindness from an innocent little boy can lead to murder, ritualistic sacrifices, cannibalism, abortions, near apocalypses, and a bloody satanic orgy.
Stan, what the hell is going on? It's Critter Christmas, dude. It sucks ass.
Number 10. Agretzko, We Wish You a Metal Christmas. Agretzko, Netflix's hit Sanrio anime for everyone who was dying to see a show where the innocent, all-ages friendly adorableness of the Hello Kitty art style is contrasted with brutally honest portrayals of the horrors of mundane adult life in the real world. And the results proved to be one of those painfully relatable series that legions of viewers didn't know they needed so badly until they received it, me included. The Christmas special actually focuses more on Haida than the titular Retzko, before whole seasons of the show arguably became just as much, if not more, about him. Having been gently shot down by Retzko once already at the end of Season 1, all he wants is to try asking her out again, have some fun, get to know each other better, and hopefully become more than friends one day. And Christmas Eve is the perfect special occasion for it. But his shyness and Retzko's own priorities for the holiday make it easier said than done. With the massive workload her sadistic boss dumps on her and little else going on in her mundane life, Retzko, well...
Merry freaking Christmas!
She can only take so much without some kind of distraction, and so lately she's taken refuge in Instagram and fishing for likes. She wants to have the most literally picture-perfect Christmas Eve to show off to all those total strangers on the internet. And while it would be easy to complain about how shallow her subplot feels, that's actually the point in the end. That despite what the contemporary pantheon of Christmas stories may tell you, your holiday doesn't have to be extravagant, romantic, picturesque, or even all that well planned. The highlight of it can just be having a pleasant time eating fast food with your friends. And just getting a little time to walk and chat with that one person you care about can be its own little Christmas miracle. It's one of those uniquely relatable specials that really speaks to those times where the holiday didn't go at all how you wanted, but you had enough of what you needed for it to still be jolly and fulfilling in its own way. It's cute, funny, deceptively mature and subtle at times, and it ends on a realistically understated yet pretty damn precious note. Whether you're already an Agretzko fan or just looking for a nice little half-hour holiday special that stands well enough on its own, I can safely wish you a fun time watching We Wish You a Metal Christmas. Number 9. BoJack Horseman, Sabrina's Christmas Wish. What better place to find a festive, feel-good Christmas special than a show known for soul-crushingly accurate depictions of depression, self-loathing, grief, substance abuse, existential crises, and lots of other holly jolly topics. Yes, BoJack Horseman, despite taking place in a cartoon world with anthropomorphic animals in it like a Gretzko, is rightfully renowned for how uncomfortably, challengingly, and captivatingly real it can get, all while still being pretty damn hilarious when it has the room for it. That said, this special is actually a lot lighter than the show would get in the later seasons, and has a good balance of the anti-holiday cheer that you'd expect from the title character, while still being genuinely sweet in its own way. BoJack and Todd sit down to watch a Christmas episode of Horsin' Around, the cheesy family sitcom BoJack used to star in, and that's already a perfect setup. This wholesome sitcom dad spouting cringy, G-rated jokes is everything BoJack obviously is not, and periodically cutting back to him watching the episode and having none of it is funny enough. But what's even funnier is how easily he can go from being embarrassed by the show to vehemently defending it the second anybody else criticizes it even a little. Because BoJack. The episode within the episode is about BoJack's character introducing Christmas to his adopted orphan kids, overpromising what wishes Santa Claus can grant for them, and young Sarah Lynn's character, Sabrina, wishing for her parents to come back. Cue the laugh track. As you'd expect, we get lots of good jabs at family-friendly sitcom cliches, like the annoyingly precocious kids, the corny, punnerific catchphrases, the obnoxious, easily impressed studio audience, and the tame dilemmas like, "Oh no, my stingy boss wants me to work on Christmas. What am I gonna do?" But as much as it does poke fun at sitcoms and syrupy, formulaic Christmas stories, it culminates in a pretty unironically moving moment between BoJack and Sarah Lynn's characters that's very earnest, unique, and down-to-earth as Christmas messages go. And while it's technically taking place within the Horsin' Around episode, the simultaneously disillusioning and reassuring honesty of it also fits right in with the BoJack Horseman series we're used to. And the framing device of BoJack and Todd watching a cheesy, heartwarming Christmas special does serve a purpose of its own, too. Notoriously negative BoJack eventually kinda sorta admits that there is a certain appeal and value to stuff like this, in not so many words of course, again, because BoJack. Which I think speaks a lot to those who have nostalgic, guilty pleasure holiday traditions we can't help but revisit every year, no matter how much we might prefer not to admit it. A fittingly clever and meta Christmas episode for a show like this, and an all-around thoroughly entertaining time.
Things don't become traditions because they're good, BoJack. They become good because they're traditions.
You know you can't just make yourself sound smart by saying things backwards.
Oh, I can't. Can't I?
Number 8. Batman Returns. Kinda funny, this movie is as much about Christmas as it is about Batman himself. For the most part, the story is focused more on the Penguin and Catwoman, how they clash with Batman, yet how thematically similar they each are to him in their own ways, how they conspire with or against each other, and most importantly, how corny they can make their fight banter.
Eat floor. High fiber.
Part of why this approach works is that each of said villains all have something to do with each other for reasons that narratively make sense, and each represents some kind of interesting parallel to Bruce Wayne. Max Schreck has a lot of wealth and public presence like Bruce, but is totally corrupt. The Penguin grew up parentless and is considered a freakish outsider, but instead of rising above his pain and using it for good like Bruce, he uses it to justify evil deeds. And Catwoman, of course, shares the day and night dual identity thing, but instead of keeping her darkest nature mostly in check like Bruce, embracing it and seeking revenge after being a put-upon doormat all her life is just too damn liberating for her to pass up. On that note, I don't know how popular this opinion may or may not be, but as far as I'm concerned, this is the best Catwoman. Most other versions of the character and her relationship with Batman work perfectly fine, but Selina Kyle here isn't an ultra-confident femme fatale committing crimes for money or animal rights or whatever, but a browbeaten, lifelong nobody whose tragic near-death experience has set her free to finally do things she never dared to before, but is also mentally and emotionally tearing her apart. Rather than just having the costumed identity thing in common, this version of Selena also has mental stability and vengeance issues on par with, and sometimes surpassing, Bruce's, making their connection twice as intriguing and bittersweet. The crude, chaotic, Frankenstein-together style of her costume really visually complements what's going on with the character in this version, and whatever else you may or may not like about the movie, the Catwoman stuff alone makes it worth watching. Well, that and, of course, every Christopher Walken scene.
Santa Claus? Afraid not. I'm just a poor schmo. Got lucky.
Bruce, shame on you.
Yawn.
I'll not stand for mudslinging in this office.
Do it again, I'll stab you in the face with a soldering iron.
And getting back to Christmas, sure, nobody has their heart grow 3 sizes or becomes a second father to a sickly, angelic little boy, but all the decorations around Gotham, the macabre yet enchanting music that only Danny Elfman can provide, and the snowy, melancholy atmosphere really convey how figuratively and literally cold it can feel to spend the holiday alone, wondering what could have been but just wouldn't be. Number 7. Justice League, Comfort and Joy. I was kinda tempted to put Christmas with the Joker on the list too, R.I.P. Kevin Conroy, still my all-time favorite Batman, but I already included a Batman movie here, and I decided one DC Animated Universe episode was enough. And frankly, as a Christmas story, I do prefer the Justice League episode. There's unfortunately no appearance by Batman or Wonder Woman in this episode, but we see every other member of the League spending their Christmas Eve in different ways. Green Lantern introduces Hawkgirl to the time-honored Earth custom of snowball fighting, and she in turn introduces him to how they celebrate special occasions where she's from. The Flash struggles to find a mega-popular toy that he promised to a bunch of orphans. It's of course sold out everywhere, and even when he gets a hold of the toy, superhero shenanigans complicate things. And my favorite of the 3 stories is Superman inviting the Martian Manhunter to spend his first Christmas with him and his family at the Kent farm. This episode has exactly as much lighthearted fun, satisfyingly spot-on character bits, and genuine Yuletide feels as you could want from a Christmas story about the world's most iconic superhero team. GL and Hawkgirl taking a break from hero work to have some innocent fun and growing closer as a budding couple, the Flash's desire to grant the Christmas wish of a bunch of less fortunate kids being so damn sincere and moving that it even gets one of the villains to lend him a hand.
It's not gonna blow up or anything.
Flash, it is Christmas.
And Flash later repaying that in kind, touchingly showing that a little holiday goodwill can go a long way whether it's towards friends or enemies. And the scenes at the Kent farm are full of that familiar, content atmosphere of spending Christmas home with family, presents, and hot cocoa, all while Jean gradually comes to understand why the holidays are such a special time for humans, and gains his own unique appreciation of it from his lonely alien perspective. He's not only a fish out of water, which is occasionally played to humorous effect.
My name is Jean. I'm a Martian.
Oh, we're no strangers to aliens in this house.
But this time of hope and togetherness for Earthlings leaves an all the more poignant impact on him, as the still grieving last survivor of his own home planet. I won't spoil any specifics, but it's downright heartwarming. A Justice League Christmas episode has no excuse for being anything short of super, and this one thankfully more than delivers. Oh, and to all of you people who complain that Superman is quote-unquote too goody-goody, well, get a load of this. Dude totally tries to peek at his Christmas presents with X-ray vision. There may be hope for him to make the naughty list yet. Number 6. Gundam Wing Endless Waltz. I'm a big mecha anime fan, and this is one of the few that happen to take place on Christmas. And if the Invader Zim episode taught us anything, it's that there's always room for more giant robot fights in any good Christmas story. Endless Waltz takes place a year after the events of the Gundam Wing TV series, which, long story short if you're not familiar, was about 5 teenage soldiers hailing from space colony nations and piloting super powerful giant robots called Gundams. They wage war against the corrupt powers that be on Earth, and it eventually leads to world disarmament and peace. But as it turns out, world peace in and of itself is not good enough for certain parties, who want a peaceful world under their rule. A faction figureheaded by Marimea Kushranada, the supposed daughter of venerated military leader and world peace martyr from the series, Treize Kushranada, moved to seize control of the Earth Sphere government. They use the catastrophic threat of dropping one of the huge space colonies onto Earth, and a secretly developed army of new mobile suits to enforce their rule afterward, and to squash any threats to the plan before it can be executed, like the Gundam pilots, who come out of retirement to kick ass one last time. It's funny how much more backstory and humanity we get for protagonist Hiro Yui in the flashbacks here than we got in almost 50 episodes of the series, as well as some helpful background for the other Gundam pilots in their beginnings. Fans of Gundam Wing will particularly appreciate that aspect of Endless Waltz, as well as Zex Marquise returning as one of the good guys this time, piloting the badass and sexy beast that is Tall Geese 3. However, while it's really best viewed after having seen the series, I think even if you're a Gundam newcomer, this will still be a decently accessible movie that gives you enough of what you need to know about Gundam Wing to understand and care about what's going on. In fact, for that purpose, I'd say this is one of those times where it actually helps that most of the main characters are fairly basic archetypes. There's only so much you really need to know about them going in. Hiro is stoic, badass, and broody. Troa, R.I.P. Kirby Morrow, is a drifter who is also stoic, badass, and slightly less broody, usually. Duo is mellow, sarcastic, and easily the closest of the five to an everyman. Catra is gentle-hearted, noble, and filthy rich, and Wu Fei sucks. I kid. Mostly. While it's not really explored as meaningfully as the sometimes pretentious script would have you believe, the story does touch upon the interesting topic of what those like Hiro and Wu Fei, having grown too used to war through little to no fault of their own, are supposed to do in a world that is outgrowing the need for them. If you don't think this movie sounds Christmassy enough at face value, well, one of the Gundams has big-ass frickin' angel wings, and, spoilers, it literally ends with peace on Earth while an instrumental rendition of Jingle Bells plays. If Die Hard counts as a genuine Christmas movie, then so does this. The animation is crisp with that glorious 90s mecha anime feel, the soundtrack is as catchy and exciting as ever, the action scenes are cool, and the story serves as a satisfying further conclusion to the series that leaves each character on a pretty fitting note. I know I love to watch Endless Waltz around this time of year, and I'm sure plenty of other Gundam and classic Toonami fans do too. Number 5. Krampus. When someone says Christmas horror comedy movie, lots of people probably think Gremlins first, and while that is an awesome movie, I'm just personally more attached to Krampus, which has a very similar kind of twisted, darkly zany Yuletide entertainment value. Directed by Michael Dougherty, the same guy who gave us one of my favorite Halloween movies, Trick or Treat, this movie is just as unorthodox, humorous, and effectively creepy and suspenseful when it needs to be, but this time with Christmas trappings and themes instead of Halloween. It starts with a nice boy named Max who really wants to believe in the ideals of Christmas, like the usual festive traditions, turning the other cheek and being patient with others even when it's hard, and sending a letter to Santa Claus asking for your truest Christmas wish. But when the extended family come to visit for the holiday, and despite their best efforts, Max's family doesn't especially get along with them, for reasons I'm sure a lot of families with mixed feelings about holiday get-togethers with relatives can understand all too well. Different manners, different values, different politics, all that uncomfortable stuff. The family tension reaches a boiling point when Max's cousins are particularly cruel to him, and he finally decides fuck all them and fuck Christmas spirit. And quicker than you can say, yes, Virginia, there is a Christmas devil, a huge blizzard appears overnight, cutting the whole neighborhood off from electricity and contact with the outside world, and the family find themselves terrorized by the powers of a Christmas visitor far more sinister and unforgiving than Santa Claus. It's a ton of fun to watch this disorganized, dysfunctional family having to fight off killer gingerbread cookies, child-devouring toys, a posse of devilish elves, and finally the towering shadow of St. Nicholas himself. The movie even creates a great winter horror atmosphere that reminds me a lot of John Carpenter's The Thing or 30 Days of Night, where the environment is arguably just as hazardous as the monsters. We really feel how blistering cold it is outside, how the blizzard hinders visibility and transportation, and how it all leaves the characters genuinely isolated from any help except each other's. Kind of reminds me of another subversive reimagining of what Christmas togetherness means.
Don't you see? Fear has brought us together. That's the magic of Xmas.
Except in that story, it was just a humorous twist at the end that made an unexpected kind of sense. This story is actually somewhat about how fear, adversity, and a common threat can bring together people who might otherwise seem incompatibly different from each other. I enjoy a Christmas story with a nice, warm, sentimental message as much as the next guy, but I've also got to love one that has an uncompromisingly cynical and pragmatic take on the quote-unquote true meaning of Christmas. Rare is the Yuletide tale that ultimately just shrugs and says, yes, the holiday season is a chaotic, hypocritical, hyper-materialistic nightmare. Yes, you probably shouldn't have to put up with people you don't actually like in your home, even if you do share some DNA. Yes, doing the right thing and being good when others aren't probably will be a thankless pain in the ass most of the time. But hey, if you can't be good to your fellow man despite all that and for the right reasons, try to do it at least for the sake of improving your chances of survival in case all hell ever breaks loose on you. One of the few actually good Christmas horror movies I can think of, Krampus is a suspenseful, creepily comic ride, and just might make naughty viewers grateful that a lump of coal was the worst thing they ever got for Christmas. You little bitches got off lightly. Number 4. Klaus. This movie is the most recent thing on the list, premiering in 2019, but I know I'm not the only one who's already watched it again every December since. First off, just look at it! So much love went into this stunning, groundbreaking animation. This is one of the most uniquely beautiful looking animated films in recent memory, and it's well worth watching for that alone. But there's much more. We followed Jesper, a lazy, spoiled, rotten man-child whose wealthy father is fed up with his freeloading attitude, so he sends him to a remote town far up north to establish a successful postal service in 1 year or else he's cut off for good. To make matters worse, the town is a dilapidated slum split right down the middle between two families who have been feuding for generations, and as such, they don't really have much reason to send letters to anyone. But wouldn't you know it, Jesper eventually meets a certain large, bearded woodsman who has lots and lots of toys and a soft spot for giving to children. So they form a partnership. Jesper gets closer to his quota by encouraging the town's kids to send as many letters as possible asking for toys from Mr. Klaus, and he and Klaus deliver said toys by night, gradually growing closer as friends, unwittingly changing the town for the better, and establishing many of the Santa Claus tropes we're all familiar with. Kids writing wish list letters, the naughty list and the coal thing making kids think twice about being brats, how the hell such a big guy can deliver gifts by going down narrow chimneys, Santa's toy-making helpers, leaving milk and cookies on Christmas Eve, and plenty more. This is one of the most clever and charming reimaginings of Santa's origin story ever. Like A Christmas Carol, the story starts out with a protagonist who's the last thing you'd expect when it comes to Christmas spirit, but even while he's scheming and playing his new friends so he can get out of this town and back to Easy Street, Jesper grows to genuinely care about these people and the unexpectedly wonderful thing he's helped build. Yeah, we admittedly have one of those formulaic character lies or just isn't completely honest about their motives, the truth is revealed at the wrong time, and there's a third act breakup and yada 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 that we've seen so many times before and are all very, very tired of. For me, even though I would have certainly appreciated them doing something a little newer with the trope, I think it works fine here. It's an effective enough character arc for Jesper, and the movie has more than enough other truly inspired things about it. The only other thing I can kind of nitpick about this movie is one or two kind of immersion-shattering modern music choices in a story that has an otherwise fairly timeless feel. Just why? But at least those parts are over quick. Whatever, nitpicks. Overall, it's a smart, funny, gorgeous movie that provides those sincere, beautiful moments of childlike wonder that melt your heart like all great Christmas tales do. and it lives by perhaps the most concise summary of what Christmas spirit and kindness itself are really all about.
A true, selfless act always sparks another.
Number 3. Arthur Christmas. Christmas stories sure do like the whole past, present, and future thing, don't they? This movie has its own quite original take on it, with Christmas past, present, and future being represented by conflicting views of 3 different generations of Santas. We have Santa's 2 sons, Arthur and Steve, the former being a klutzy, wide-eyed, and cheerful true believer in what Santa Claus stands for to children all over the world, and the latter being the next in line to take over the family operation, which he's essentially already running and bringing into the modern era with tons of ultra-advanced technology and ultra-efficient oversight. Then there's their dad, the current Santa, who's getting on in years, is straight up called just a figurehead for how little he really directly does on the yearly flight nowadays, due to all of Steve's innovations. And overall, he's just so content and accustomed to his position as Santa, which he's been so happy and comfortable with for so long that he's afraid of change. And finally, there's Grand Santa, who goes on and on about how much better the good old days were, when all he needed was the iconic sleigh and reindeer to get the Santa job done. Like many of our grandparents, he's eccentric, wistful for the way things worked back in his day, never misses an opportunity to remind everyone how highly opinionated he is genuinely wise and caring at times, and of course, slightly racist.
I said me and Evie could get here, and we did. The rest is just elf work.
The clash of the newer generation coming of age and trying to move things forward, previous generation wanting things to stay the way they're used to, and the generation before either of them wanting people to appreciate things the way they remember them, is timelessly relevant and all the more relatable in this movie because it's not just the conflicting opinions about how to do the Santa job. It's a family conflict, with each side having their own legitimate strengths to offer, their own drawbacks, and their own personal issues with each other on just a character dynamic level. But all the while, our protagonist Arthur doesn't particularly care who's right or wrong about how to do the job, so long as it gets done and all the children whose letters he reads endlessly get their presents and feel that special magic come Christmas morning. And it so happens that even with all the modernized systems they've implemented to maximize gift delivery efficiency, errors are still gonna happen once in a while, and one child's gift wasn't delivered. So Arthur and Grand Santa set out on a mission to rush the gift to its recipient before morning, followed eventually by the rest of the family, a stowaway elf with super gift wrapping skills, fast-paced, hilarious shenanigans, and plenty of Christmas wonder and feels. This movie is fun enough from the start, just with all the crazy, detailed, high-tech Christmas delivery stuff, like the giant space-age sleigh complete with warp speed and cloaking capability, stealthy Black Ops-style elves doing the actual delivering, scanners that gauge children's naughty or nice levels, and so much more delightfully inventive stuff like that. There's a lot of really smartly written laughs in this film, with all kinds of cute little Christmas gags, abundant witty jokes and quips, and a lot of blink and you miss it bits that are both funny and add to the world building at the same time. Basically, this whole movie is a well-oiled machine that's impressive and thoroughly entertaining in just about every way. With how relentlessly funny, imaginative, and heartfelt it is, Arthur Christmas is a modern holiday classic that I, like many others I'm sure, didn't see when it first premiered, but now watch every year, because it really is just that good. Number 2. Doctor Who, A Christmas Carol. Yes, I know, earlier when I listed a bunch of the obvious Christmas favorites I wasn't going to include here, A Christmas Carol was of course one of them. So yeah, I'm technically breaking my own rules here.
Cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating...
But I'm also technically not, because I don't think of this special as another straightforward adaptation of A Christmas Carol. It's a Doctor Who story through and through, where the Doctor knowingly incorporates and spins elements of the classic tale in some truly fantastic ways. The Doctor's current time and space traveling companions, Amy and Rory, are spending their honeymoon on a spaceship flying around an alien planet, that winds up in a horrible storm that will cause the ship to crash and kill everyone aboard before long. So it's up to the Doctor to save them all. He barges in on the rich, bitter old man who owns the only device that can control the weather on this planet, and essentially strangleholds the whole population with it. Even when the Doctor explains how many lives depend on clearing the storm, the man is so thoroughly callous and mean-spirited that it becomes clear regular persuasion just won't cut it. After a fortuitously timed moment of inspiration, however, the Doctor quickly enacts a plan to change this old man's heart by using the Christmas Carol formula. Using his time-traveling vessel, the TARDIS, the Doctor is able to go back in time and act as the ghost of Christmas past, altering the man's unhappy and abused childhood by giving him new, happier memories of fun, adventure, and even young love. Although the changed history also creates some unforeseen problems later. Amy and the rest of the ship's desperate passengers, with their plight in the here and now holographically demonstrated to the old man up close and personal, serve as the perfect Ghost of Christmas present. And I dare not spoil how they handle the Ghost of Christmas future part, because it's not only one of the most fiendishly clever twists that Doctor Who has ever done, but also an ingenious reimagining of that part of the original tale. It's so simple yet so well set up and powerful that it both blows your mind and melts your heart at the same time. With numerous different actors bringing their own unique mark on the Doctor character over the show's long history, every Whovian has their own favorite version, and while Matt Smith's 11th Doctor isn't quite my overall favorite, that would be the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, in case you were wondering, 11 is easily my favorite Doctor to spend a Christmas adventure with. Probably because of how Santa-like he is pretty much year-round. The dude is just that jolly and compassionate, and the quirkiness, occasional bumbling, and childlike enthusiasm that some past Doctors had are, appropriately enough, ramped up to 11. This special has plenty of Stephen Moffat-era Doctor Who's usual lightning-quick, whip-smart humor sprinkled all throughout the dialogue, the imaginative and ridiculous sci-fi world-building bits, like sharks that swim through icy skies that can only be calmed with song, and a genuinely effective emotional side of the story that works so well in most good Doctor Who stories, but feels especially poignant and sweet here. Doctor Who has had numerous Christmas specials, but this one will probably always be my personal favorite, and the one I consider the strongest as a Christmas story. Doctor Who, A Christmas Carol is an inspired reimagining of Charles Dickens' endlessly adapted story that celebrates the timeless themes and power of the classic tale, while being a wonderfully inventive story that anyone, regular Doctor Who viewers or not, would do well to watch this holiday season. Oh, and while we're here, happy 60th anniversary, Doctor Who. Before we get to number 1, a quick look at a few other holiday season favorites that are also less obvious than the timeless classics, that I also like to watch almost every December, and that just barely missed making my overall top 12.
If we go out on patrol and Gotham is quiet with no sign of the Joker, we come back here, have Christmas dinner, and watch It's a Wonderful Life.
You know, I've never seen that. I could never get past the title.
There's a wondrous magic to Christmas, and there's a special power reserved for little people. In short, there's nothing mightier than the meek.
Hey, everybody! Don't despair! I'm Olive, and I'm going to the North Pole to help Santa. I'm the other reindeer.
Olive! 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 Olive. Okay.
Am I on the naughty list?
On naughty list, you hold the record. But no matter, we overlook. Now we are wiping clean the slate.
Lucky's on?
Merry Christmas. And what did you do to the naughty ones?
I give them a lump of coal.
Yeah, give them their lumps. Take that coal and shove it straight up their
Anuses.
Yeah!
And my number 1 less obvious favorite Christmas movie or special is Tokyo Godfathers. Directed by the late great Satoshi Kon, who gave us the famously stylized, reality-bending Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Paranoia Agent, and Paprika, Tokyo Godfathers has probably the least of that surreal stream of consciousness, kind of diegetic yet kind of fantasy at the same time trippiness that Cohn's other work is so known for. Instead, the story is fairly grounded and much more driven by offbeat character chemistry, probably thanks in no small part to its co-writer, the sadly also late great Keiko Nobumoto of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo fame. At Christmas time, three homeless people, a grouchy drunk man, an optimistic trans woman, and a standoffish runaway teenage girl, stumble upon a baby abandoned in the garbage. At first, they squabble about what to do with her, eventually deciding to track down her parents and return her to them personally, despite having little leads to go on, little money for the travel or eventual medical expenses, and at times little patience for each other's conflicting attitudes. Throughout the story, we get twists and turns about where this child originally came from, and revelations about each of our bums' pasts that stubborn pride, crushing guilt, or a desire not to be a burden on others have kept them all from facing for so long. Despite how much we hear about helping the less fortunate of society around the holidays, I can't think of many Christmas stories that are actually told from the perspective of the homeless. It doesn't shy away from how hard it is to get by scraping for sustenance wherever they can, being ignored, dehumanized, and outright abused for being the quote-unquote trash of society, according to some people, and just how important the ties and adoptive families we may forge really are when we have literally nothing else to take for granted. The movie has a uniquely unorthodox, cartoony, yet never too over-the-top sense of humor peppered all throughout, which is often all the more funny because of how realistically designed everybody is, and how much we get invested in the characters. For every loud, goofy moment where we're laughing at the characters bickering or some sardonic gag, there are also quiet, subtle, and poignant moments where we're really feeling for the characters, their personal regrets, how cold and bleak their lives are day to day, and what bringing this baby home personally means to each of them. There are famously a ton of incredible coincidences in the story that in most other movies might put a strain on your suspension of disbelief, like our bum heroes more than once running into total strangers who happen to provide just the lead they're looking for at just the right time, running into specific people from each of their pasts and getting some personal resolution, just barely unwittingly dodging death a few times, and plenty more. But all the crazy coincidences and bouts of luck are clearly an intentional theme. I always think of it as this movie's one-of-a-kind way of illustrating what the crazy causal chain of events leading to a real-life Christmas miracle might look like, with all the unlikely variables on top of unlikely variables, any one of which are totally improbable but maybe not impossible, somehow all aligning and playing some part in the resolution by the end. Whether you attribute it to God's will like some of the characters do, or just the sheer craziest of crazy luck, I've never seen any movie depict that Christmas magic we take for granted in other stories quite like this movie does. And either way, the resolution feels no less earned or gratifying by the end. Tokyo Godfathers is a wonderful movie that exemplifies the spirit of Christmas with the best of them. A story about the importance of companionship at our lowest points, and active compassion towards others, no matter our lot in life. One of my personal favorite movies at any time of year, and easily my number one favorite of less obvious favorite Christmas movies. Well, that was my silly list of favorites. Once again, if you have your own less conventional favorites that may differ, please do share them. With a topic like this, I'm sure other people out there have some very interesting picks of their own, and I'd love to hear about them. I'm the adorable RJ, and until next time, thanks for watching, glory to fankind, please like and subscribe and stuff if you're so inclined, and I sincerely wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.